Well, good afternoon, everyone. Meteorologist Michael Wilhite here with Southern Indiana Weather. Lots to talk about in our video update today. Big-time pattern changes are on the way. I've been talking with you really the past couple of weeks that I've been doing these videos that a big-time cool-down is looming on the horizon. And of course, I've done 3 or 4 of these long-range forecasts now, and we've seen it. And I told you the models would begin to sort of adjust themselves over time, and that's exactly what we're finding. If you look here at the GFS ensembles, the latest one that we have available to look at, you still see that big-time cool-down available for us. You know, we hit 70s until we go through Wednesday, and then by the time we hit Wednesday, you see quite a significant difference in the cool-down. I mean, you know, look at a couple of days here in the upper 50s, a few days not hitting over 64 according to this particular run of the ensemble. And you know, this thing will adjust itself over time. If we just go back and look, here's what the same graphic looked like 2 days ago on its ensembles, and you see it had the cool down starting here the 16th as well, so it stayed consistent with that. No 50s in sight there. If you look at what yesterday did, yes, up and down between the 60s and 50s, and then of course if you look at that today, you see something very similar. So that's a pattern that we are picking up on, which is a good sign, because whenever we have model consistency from run to run like that, it shows us that there's a consistent pattern. And it gives us a greater confidence that this will actually occur. If you have a model flip-flopping back and forth where one day it says it's going to be a big-time cool down, and for the next couple of model runs it shows more of a neutral or more of a warm-up, and then it goes back down for a model run or two and just keeps flipping back and forth, doesn't give you much confidence in the model. But the fact that for several model runs now, and far more than what I just showed you, we've been seeing this big-time cool down looming gives me a bit of confidence that it's going to be time for fall jacket weather here very soon. And so let's just sort of get into this and see what we got going on. Let's take a look at the surface map and precipitation over the next few days. We'll start this out pretty much here where we're at now. We put this into motion, and you see a small front coming through 8 a.m. on Saturday morning. You see a little bit of precipitation getting closer to us by 2 p.m. Really by 8 p.m. we're still high and dry here in southern Indiana. It's not going to be until we get into the overnight hours on Sunday morning that we start seeing show up. And really this slightest shade of gray here, we're not even talking 1/10 of an inch of precipitation with this. We're talking hundredths of an inch of precipitation with this. And of course, as you put it into motion, this map then keeps most of Sunday dry. So the latest particular model run here of the GFS keeps for one, not much rain over the weekend at all, and for two, it brings it out of here pretty much by midday on Sunday, and leaves us sort of with a mostly dry Saturday and Sunday, and not much going on. This front is not going to be anything to worry about. In fact, this is going to be mostly dry, as we can see. The big front that we're going to be talking about is next Tuesday. As we continue to put this into motion, you see a storm system starting to develop here over, Nebraska, Kansas, Colorado border up in here. Watch how this evolves as we put this into motion over time. You start to see it slide our way, so here we are at 2 p.m. on Tuesday afternoon. It's getting ever so closer to us. Here we are at 8 p.m. Tuesday. We start to go into the overnight hours on Wednesday, and it starts to move through. And if we just sort of draw on here to give you an idea of what we're talking about, this would be sort of the positioning of the cold front behind this. Now, I'm not worried about severe weather with this front in particular. It is a very strong cold front, but the upper level dynamics just aren't there. But what this will be is sort of a pattern changer that's going to drive some much cooler weather in our way that you saw back in the previous graphic that we looked at. Remember, low pressures, winds rotate counterclockwise around lows. Around high pressures, it's the exact opposite. They rotate clockwise. What we're going to be is sandwiched in between these two, and what you're going to have is a cold northwest flow. It's sort of going to be as if Canada sprung a leak. That's where our cooler air is going to come from during this time frame, and that's going to last for several days as you put this into motion. One thing to notice, you don't see a whole lot of precipitation with this either. It's not a dry front, but it's not going to be a gully washer like we saw with our last severe weather over last weekend. Nothing like that expected this time, and that's a good thing. We saw some areas have anywhere from 4 to 7 inches of rain around the area in that short little amount of time. We continue on this. We still see some lingering showers even into Thursday morning here, but by the time Thursday afternoon comes, it's all high and dry. Put this into motion and you continue to see that northwest flow on it. Now, just real quick, I'll show you the 4-kilometer NAMS, the future radar product on here, just to give you an idea of how little precipitation we're talking about over this weekend. So really, as you go in here, you see almost nothing happening on here. A few showers maybe on Saturday. As you go into Sunday, really not a whole lot either. So again, that's why I say this front this weekend, not that much to worry about. The one on Tuesday is the more powerful one. And here's the reason why. If we take a look at the jet stream, and if I just animate this jet stream for you, you can really see this baby take a nosedive over us. We start off a little bit on the warm trend, but then notice this dip in the jet stream as it goes on. And this dip in the jet stream really continues on for several days. If we just kind of go back here we are at Wednesday at 2 p.m. in the afternoon. So this is about when the front's going to be passing. The front will be up in here by this particular point in time. You've got a pretty solid upper level low pressure here, and then what you find is the jet stream taking a huge dip over us in sort of this fashion right here. And you see some pretty fast wind speeds over us too. One would think naturally with that could be conducive to severe weather, and but we don't see the other parameters with it. We don't see a lower level jet, an LLJ, as we've talked about before with it. So that's just not going to be something to worry about. Instability is not going to be a big factor either. For instability, we look at warmth and moisture, and we do see a little bit of warmth here. It's not like we're particularly cold. We're in the 60s here, and as far as dew points are concerned, though, you notice as the front passes, we've only had dew points in the 60s, and certainly you see that colder, drier air filtering in behind the surface low pressure. But the biggest thing that we would see a lack of right here would be instability. If we throw on our CAPE product, remember CAPE is convective available potential energy. It's a measure of instability in the atmosphere, and you just see it's next to nothing. So as far as my reading on this, I don't think severe weather is anything that we should be worried about on this plate. What we are going to see with that is if we just put the surface map on this, and you see the low pressure here, and you see the big cold front that's moved through, again, it's just going to be those cold, dry air pumping down in from Canada. That's going to be the big time story for us as we go throughout this. So how cold are we taking a look at? Well, let's just take a look at our maximum temperatures over the next few days from the GFS model. That's different from the ensembles that we looked at earlier. This just gives a little bit of a different perspective on it. And you can see maximum temperatures throughout the days. We stay in the 70s for a little while. By the time we get here to the 16th of October, we're still at 72. We're still in the 70s for a high, but notice the advance of this cooler weather moving towards us as we go through here in such a way that finally, by the time here we are, a maximum temperature on Friday of only 61 degrees according to this model. And as you advance it in time, you see, man, a maximum temperature only in the upper 50s here on Saturday potentially, and as you go on, you see maximum temperatures maybe generally 50s to low 60s as you go through this. So a decent sized cool down most certainly in store as we go through here. If we look at minimum temperatures, that's something we also want to be concerned about. Are we going to see any chances of freezing or frost? Well, the models don't indicate this at the moment, but we'll see where they go with it. And you can see generally the low 50s for our overnight lows, maybe some upper 40s for the next few days. By the time that front passes, though, if we come down to, let's just say 8 a.m. next Sunday morning after the front has passed through, we've got an overnight low of 50 according to the GFS here. But, you know, notice this big swath of cold, dry air starting to take over the country, and what you're going to see is that's eventually going to start to work its way through as we go through here. And you can see we start to get into it. So by the time Friday morning, the 18th of October comes, we've got 41 for a morning low on there. And if we just advance this forward a little bit in time, here we are on Saturday morning with 40 for an overnight low, and keep on going through, and you see Potentially a little bit of a warming trend. We've talked about this up and down pattern. Yesterday it looked like it was a couple of days ago, and yesterday it looked like it was going to be just a flat out cool down. Now the models are indicating maybe a hint of a warm up again, but the warm up hints that they get is really no more than 70. So and 70 is actually our 30-year average normal high for this particular time of the year anyway. So it's just no more than average, and I think much of the next 2 weeks are going to be spent below average. But we do get some cooler air filtering in here. You can see 40 for a low on some of these occasions, and finally by the time you get down to 8 a.m. on Sunday morning of the 27th, you do see some 30s filtering in here. You see mid-30s up in Indianapolis. Now, I certainly think with a low of 40 here in Huntingburg and some 30s in Indianapolis, points in between in our coverage area, most certainly could see some mid to upper 30s as well. So frost could be possible during this time frame. I certainly wouldn't rule it out. Hard freezes I don't see yet exactly at this point, but it can't be ruled out, and it's something that we're going to be, we'll take a look at it and continue monitoring as the time goes on. So definitely something that we'll keep monitoring. As far as for whether or not these things will come to pass, we've also talked about sort of what's the chances of this. Again, I think the chances are pretty good because we've gotten the model consistency with it. But keep in mind that these things will adjust over time. So even though the model may be saying that we see a low of 40 in these time frames later in the month, if you remember right, when we looked at it a couple of days ago on the video, it was showing mid-30s. So mid-30s to low 40s, really not that much of a difference in the temperature spread, but it could mean the difference in whether we get a frost or not out of the deal. So certainly things will be worked out as we get much closer to time, but this gives you the overall pattern trend that we are trending cooler. Fall is most certainly coming, and you're definitely going to want to get the jackets and the longer sleeve shirts out because we're in for that big time cool down over the next couple of days. And of course our teleconnections that we've looked at in the past continue that. Goodness, if you take a look at the Arctic Oscillation, it just really trends at negative. And remember, a negative means cold air is on the move from Canada on the way down, and we certainly see that with this here. And if we just take a look at the Pacific North American, remember, if you want a positive PNA, you get a trough over us. A negative PNA, you get a ridge over us. And again, you see that sort of up and down pattern here in the PNA. It goes positive for a while, we cool down. It goes negative for just a little bit. That ridge moves on over us again, and that's where I say we warm up into the 70 or so range for a day or two before we start to cool back down again. And that's the way things are taken a look at in the models as well. And of course, we see that if we look at the NAO, it means we're looking for a blocking pattern. Negative means that Greenland block forces storm systems and that cooler weather over us. Again, that's what we're seeing as a negative trend on that. So it's no surprise if you take a look at our 7-day outlook on our website, southernindianaweather.com. You see some 70s as we go through the weekend, and it will be a little bit warm. Enjoy this while you can this weekend, because I don't think Saturday's going to be all that bad of a day. I've forecasted a high of 77, sunshine mixed with a few clouds. Again, I think that slight thunderstorm chance comes later in the evening, but really this will probably be the warmest day of the rest of the year. I don't see us getting much past 70 degrees for the rest of the year after we go throughout this time frame. Now, I could be completely wrong and proven wrong about that, because Mother Nature just has a mind of her own and does what she wants to do. But it's going to be, with a pattern change like this, it's going to continue getting harder and harder. And by the time that front moves through next Wednesday, you start to see here we go down into the 60s. And I do think that as we go in through the time frame, we're going to see some 50s for highs and upper 30s for the lows as we go out by the end of the month. I do think, that's my gut feeling. I think that's going to happen with us. One thing real quick, I've set up a brand new YouTube channel for us, so please make sure to subscribe. If you go over to youtube.com and /Wilhite WX, I'll be posting all of my videos such as this onto this account. So when you get on here, make sure you click on that subscribe button so that it'll come right in there. And again, we'll be trying to do these things more regularly. I've been posting these to my personal account, but I do a lot of other things besides the weather videos on there, so this kind of keeps it into one for us. So some nice days coming ahead for us, and enjoy this weekend. Get out and do some hiking or some outdoor activities while you can, because these will probably be the last decent decent 70s that we see for a pretty good little time. Fall is certainly on the way, folks, and I'm a fall weather lover. By the way, I think this also means that our leaves probably will be changing more as time goes on, so that'll be something to look forward to as well. Hope you've enjoyed this video. That's the way things as we see it right now. I'm meteorologist Michael Wilhite for Southern Indiana Weather. Have a great day, folks.